Yo, 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 what is good to everybody watching the recording? Welcome to Wyckoff Sundays, episode 9. We are getting into month 3 of Wyckoff Sundays. Super awesome, super exciting. Once again, we definitely have a lot of good content for you guys out there to tap into with the previous Wyckoff Sundays because we have the Wyckoff Sundays and we have the execution files as well that are inside of the YouTube, right? So right now, I want you guys to understand this. This is literally like a top-down analysis that we're posting there, right? We have kind of like our bigger time frame perspective that we do on the Wyckoff Sundays, and then we have the execution files, which kind of shows the successful trades that we've taken based off of that higher time frame bias. So if you kind of put those together, where because again, it's written the date is written, there for the date is written there for like all the trades that we take for the execution files, and obviously the Wyckoff Sundays as well. You know, kind of what week we're talking about. So if you go back and again kind of want to see what higher time frame looks analysis looks like from the top down way, using this YouTube, that we've been doing, you guys can definitely give yourself the opportunity to do so, right? I think I'm just realizing here that my VPN is on, so I'm gonna take that off because that messes with my connection sometimes. All right, we're gonna disconnect because I'm on YouTube Netherlands right now. All right, so let's go ahead and tap into what happened during Wyckoff Sundays episode 8, right? So obviously we started off as always with dollar. All right, we spoke about the fact that the week before we ended up having buys from this level down here, right? Ended up catching really, really good moves up for dollar, right? We obviously said that is giving us the idea that we might potentially have like a higher time frame shift, like in the terms of like we might have seen like the idea that we've been playing with since about like episode 3 of Wyckoff Sundays, where this whole zone could potentially be a accumulation phase, right? Now, obviously, even though we accumulated, does that mean that we're just gonna mindlessly buy every single week? Not necessarily, right? And this week we were personally looking for shorts to take place on dollar, right? Because we had a really good impulse, not only above highs like this one and highs like this one over here, right? But especially these ones that were over here, that kind of and then we ended up obviously getting above those when we were on stream there, right? So you can see that that's exactly where price was when the market closed the week before, right? And so then when we got back on Sunday, we were like, okay, personally, what I was thinking was that we would end up getting a little bit higher above and then end up potentially getting a sell-off maybe to go ahead and pull back on this as we get back into a previous redistribution that played out over there, right? And so we were kind of saying like, okay, now that we've taken this high, we might potentially be able to look for signs of distribution to go ahead and continue to sell this bad boy to the downside, right? And that's really this zone that we had over here, right? I forgot I deleted all my markups. But yeah, so we have this zone right over there, right? And we can obviously see that on Sunday when the market reopened after we had our Wyckoff Sundays call, right? We saw the market just barely get above these highs here, right? And we essentially opened straight away to the downside, right? So again, like what I personally would have wanted to see to really take advantage of this move would have been for the market to again, like we opened. Sorry, we didn't open. Sorry, we closed right here when we did our Wyckoff Sundays call for episode 8. Right. And again, like I said, in this call, you guys can go back and see the recording. We spoke about the potential for US dollar to now kind of like start to, slow down a little bit, right? Kind of lose some steam because again, we've just been expanding to the upside so aggressively and we've kind of reached higher time frame targets at that point. So what I personally wanted to see again, like I said, was even though the market like closed here on the week before, I wanted to see another sweep and then from there go ahead and go to the downside. Obviously, price did not end up doing that, right? We ended up seeing the market open, and we instantly pretty much started to go in our direction right away, right? And as we could see for the majority of the week, shorts were a much better move than buys were, right? So shorts looked a lot better than the buys did, for it, and they ended up reacting a lot better when it came to at least last week, right? So exactly what we predicted to happen, we were on point with that. We pretty much said like again, now that we remove these highs, we're most likely going to be either getting one more manipulation up and going down, or really just losing steam, right away, right? And so yeah, that's kind of what we got this week, right? We had a couple of interesting candles come up last week as well. So firstly, let's go ahead and look here. So we can see here that this high that we're talking about, we saw that high get broken very quickly, and it did not really stay above there for a long period of time. As we can see here, the market starts right here, right? Buys up towards those highs, right? And then pretty much instantly sells off, right? How much time does price really spend above these highs? Not long at all, right? So when it comes to the bullish case, for it, it just weakens a lot more, right? When it comes to really looking for, again, continued longs for it. Again, bigger time frame wise, can this potentially be an accumulation? Yes, right? Let's make sure we box that up. So over here, this whole thing can potentially be an accumulation, right? But, even in accumulations, we will get pullbacks, right? We'll have lows being swept, right? We'll have price kind of playing around in the middle of the range, right, for a lot longer. And if I were to look at a range here, I would probably look at this being our range low right here. Right, so that's our range low. And then over here being our range high, right? Right there, right? And so obviously, yeah, like when we were below the range, it was a lot easier for us to just be like, all right, yeah, let's look for continued buys. Let's look for continued buys so that we can go ahead and get into the range, right? Even when we got over here and we got in the middle, we kind of identified the potential of that being a potential zone there to buy from, and we got another buy going on there, right? But that's basically what we're gonna have to start to wait for and look for now, right? Once we kind of get more into the middle of the range with Wyckoff schematics, and we want to obviously keep trading things like dollar or whatever it might be, we want to basically look for signs of reaccumulation, right? That's basically what we're looking for. We're looking for price to distribute on lower time frames and then accumulate again on lower time frames to go ahead and continue with the trend, right? Now, obviously, here we can see that even though the market did trade above the high, right, and everything like that, it didn't stay there and everything. But we also didn't, even though we did come down, and we're going to talk about some of the price action that we saw like last week. That was actually pretty good. But we also have to recognize that we didn't break structure at all yet, right? Price kind of just we have this last push to the downside right here. We can see that there was these relatively equal lows that were created there. We had the swipe of the lows, right? This is literally where we took our trade. I believe it was in Wyckoff Sundays episode 7, right? So like USD CAD buys that we called out, which I still have to make the execution files for. This one, that's how we called this buy, right? So this is definitely an interesting area where manipulation did potentially take place. So could this be an area that we potentially buy from? Absolutely, right? Absolutely could potentially be an area that we buy from if we just kind of want to, again, create like a short-term high and then continue to like, again, trend down into that area. And then we end up from there seeing price reverse. Yeah, that could definitely happen, right? In terms of like, like how much I really like it personally, right? We got to understand how different the situation is right now compared to how it was when we were buying previously, right? So what did price look like when we were buying previously? Let's talk about it. So firstly, we had, we've bought in previous levels. We have bought here, okay? We have bought here, right? And we have bought here, right? And again, go back to the previous, Wyckoff Sunday sessions, and you guys can see this too. So we called out buys in all these areas in Wyckoff Sundays, right? Actually, technically, we didn't call it here on Wyckoff Sundays, but we did call it on live streams for this last buy that happened. But all these previous buys, we called them out there, right? So what's the difference between, the potential buys that we did here, right? Versus the buys that we're potentially looking at there or maybe lower, right? What's the difference that we have there, right? Now, when we look at the highs that we're basically looking to target, right? So if we have like again these highs here, right, which I'm going to go ahead and highlight with this solid trend line there, right? We have like these lower highs and lower highs, right? And then over here we end up having relatively equal highs sitting right there, right? We get the market again having areas of liquidity that we can easily go ahead and target, right? Very, very like, big wicks like this one, for example, right? Even like kind of like if we look at it from a trend line perspective, trend line coming down there, right? We kind of had like pretty clear levels that the market could, kind of trade into, right? So we have these highs that, they don't really look like It's not like they're sweeping anything major. It's not like they are, like I guess you could say like creating institutional candles or anything like that, right? Instead, we're just creating very clear liquidity, right? Clear liquidity, clear liquidity. So those buys for me were a lot more clear and obvious because of that. When it comes to looking at buys from this current level, right, we don't really have that same kind of price action, right? So let's go ahead and look at what kind of price action we have in this high so we can really understand the difference between that and what happened here and what happened here, right? Because I'm not really too convinced on buys from this level. It is the order flow low, but because of the way that things played out in here, that's where the context becomes a little bit different, right? And that context is definitely very important when it comes to choosing a zone that we're going to potentially buy from, right? So if we have this here with dollar, we can see again the market kind of went up, right? It did trade above previous highs. We had these relatively equal highs here. That price traded above, right? Price sold off very aggressively, and then we traded back into that area before selling off again, right? So here we have the market again having that potential manipulation phase here, very aggressively trading off of that zone, right? And then we see again this here, right? And this is kind of the biggest thing for me that I really, really don't like about making us look for potential buys again, especially because of the way that we look in the highs. Because now, instead of generating liquidity, we're actually generating very clean order flow, right, to the downside, right? And I won't go too lower time frame here or anything. We'll stick it to the bigger time frame. But we can see here, like what basically happened was we did an internal sweep of this high here, right? Again, we had a pretty good high here. Price came down. Price internally swept that high, got back into the extreme area, right? Before we then obviously started to see the market trade back away, right? So we had this big push up, come down, mitigate, and then we dumped hard, right? So it's not the best, right? If we actually go to the daily as well, look at these candles here, right? We have this beautiful daily up candle right there trading back into that area. And again, we have this beautiful daily up candle right here that closes above this area of liquidity, right? And so now not only do we, again, have the potential, like, high that we were looking at that we can see that we were thinking price could potentially lose steam at, right? But now we've actually seen the market trade back into that high, right? Create a new institutional candle, right? And also show us lower time frame signs of manipulation, right? When it comes to seeing a potential internal sweep on liquidity, right? And then what do we see after that? Imbalance, right? We're seeing the market go ahead and really trade aggressively away, right? So personally, guys, like it's a little like, I'm just not fully convinced to really go ahead and look for the buys down here, right? Just yet, because it kind of does like give me the idea like, okay, what if this, again, we have a buy up like this, and then the way that we end up reaccumulating, right? A lot of the times when we reaccumulate, the way that it looks is we have a low that price goes ahead and creates a high into, right? And typically when we do see reaccumulations, we'll see that the low that we create the high into will have signs of manipulation in it, right? And so when I see things like this kind of gives me the idea that, okay, maybe we can potentially actually use this low here as liquidity instead, right? Kind of start to slowly, trade down however we want. We can even like take the high if we want, whatever, right? And then, eventually potentially get down below those lows, right? Reaccumulate down here, right? And have the distribution, right, turn into an accumulation, right? So that would be my personal most ideal scenario to go ahead and buy dollar again, would be to see like kind of a distribution happen above these highs and then eventually pull back into the accumulation range. And from there, go ahead and give signs of accumulation below lows, right? That's basically what we want to see. So kind of like an external liquidity sweep is kind of like, again, like what we would want to see, I feel like, because of the type of price action that we're seeing here, right? Whenever I look at a high, right, that even if we've come from a good low, right, and I look at the high though, and again, like we have like clear manipulation plays, right, like we had with taking the highs, right? Why can't I draw here? Clear manipulation trades taking the highs, coming down, clear mitigation trades, right, coming back, and then from there trading down towards these lows here, right? So that's kind of the idea there when it comes to seeing this whole thing happen, right? Is having like the potential for distribution in these highs makes me a lot more cautious to go ahead and trade back down. And we're going to go over everything. We start off with dollar, so we'll go into gold in a bit, so just bear with us here. We're going to go into all the dollar pairs that we always go over, right? But yeah, so this is kind of again what we're thinking with dollars. So if we end up again, having a distribution down, right? I would personally rather go ahead and see price actually take these lows and then from there see if we can get signs of accumulation down into these levels, right? So that's kind of what we're looking for into the future, right? So, when it comes to the coming week, if I were to really again kind of take a look at this, I mean the one thing that would potentially invalidate this for me, here we can see that we did have our second point of manipulation there, right? And then price traded down very aggressively. If price does not break this low, right, and we just boom it back up, then chances are this might have been, again, it might have just been order flow, right? Short-term downtrend to then just boom it back up. That could also be totally plausible, right? But for me, I always like to look at context, right? Context is the most important thing for me. So if I want to buy from these levels, I'm always going to look at what price looked at up here, right? And because price in this example had the market go ahead and again trade above highs, get back in there, trade above these highs, and then sell off, I think the most likely scenario is that this order flow continues to hold, and then we end up going ahead and going for a reaccumulation later on. So that's personally what I'm calling out. That's personally what I'm looking for when it comes to dollar, right? Because again, the context for me is super, super important, right? Even if we have a really nice low here, we had really good manipulation, we had all that, right? But then when we come back in there and we look at the high and we're getting clear institutional candles, even on the daily time frame, 4 hour time frame, it just becomes less likely. Can it still happen? Can we still just bounce up and buy? For sure. But I definitely think it's a less likely scenario that that's what ends up happening. I think the most likely scenario is we continue this distribution that we've been having, right? And again, that could be that we just sweep the high and then we do the accumulation after that, right? Could be the case, right? However it plays out, I'm not sure, right? Maybe we hold here, maybe we don't. But I do think that if we do want to look for sells to go ahead and drop down below these levels, I definitely think that playing this internal liquidity sweep, sorry, playing this internal liquidity sweep here can potentially be a good area for us to look for a trade, right? So I'd probably look up here into this extreme area, right? This could potentially be an area for a type 1 entry model here on dollar, right? Where we have this initial higher time frame zone, right? We come down, we mitigate that zone with manipulation, and now we're looking for a mitigation of that, right? Using the higher time frame stop loss, right? And then going ahead and targeting lows down towards here. That is already a setup that has already potentially presented. And I do think personally that it could be a good setup for us to go for. Again, keep in mind, obviously, you want to use risk management because there is still the chance that, again, we sweep one more time, right? Maybe another time we distribute completely, right? And then after that, we accumulate down here and then we get the buy setup, right? That could definitely be the, move, right? It's hard to see if this distribution will hold here or if we'll, again, do a full, couple of drives up. But at the moment, with how the price is looking, this is definitely an area of interest to look at, right? With the way that we've reacted, with the structure that we've created, right? I think it definitely makes sense to look inside of that high for potential opportunities, right? So aligning with that idea, right? What can we potentially see for the US dollar currency pairs, right? So we're going to go into currencies, we're going to go into metals, we're going to go into indices, and we're going to go into crypto, right? So let's go into currency here, right? So currency looks interesting for sure, right? I'm gonna go ahead and delete some of this stuff here. So yeah, so obviously when it comes to Euro USD, we have spoken about the possibility, just like with dollar, of this being a potential distribution as a whole, right? And so obviously, if we were looking for dollar to potentially buy, then we'd be looking for Euro USD to potentially sell. And if we're looking for dollar to sell, then we're looking for Euro USD to buy, right? So what's that same relative zone for Euro USD as it is for dollar? It's going to be right down here, right? So here we can see that with Euro USD, we had the market, kind of almost accumulate here, right? It does actually look like we might have seen a potential 4 hour accumulation on your USD, right? What's some of the evidence for that being a higher time frame accumulation? I mean, firstly, we get this extremely high volume low, right? That high volume low creates a big wick and stuff, right? And then we obviously see the market kind of trading lower, right? Getting weaker volume, right? And then we end up, again, having kind of this three drive push down, right? So is it like, okay, could this potentially be like, a higher time frame, accumulation for us, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go here. Oops. And I want to make this a range. Where's my toolbar? Should be. Oh, it's at the bottom. Sorry, my zoom thing is in the way. So here we go. We're gonna put our range, right? I'm gonna clone that, right? And the other upper half of our range is over here. Right, so we didn't really get too many tests of the range, but it's not bad, right? It looks good to me. And so, again, we get our potential accumulation here, right? This kind of being our first drive, second drive, third drive, right? We get our UTs as well, right? I'm not going to drop the whole thing, but you guys get the point. And then after we end up, getting back down towards these lows here, right? We get the market breaking up, right? And then again, very similar to dollar, we have this internal liquidity sweep sitting right here in this low, right? And so there we kind of have another point of manipulation that we can potentially play off of. Right. So I'm going to make this one yellow. Oops, yellow. I'll make this one here red. Right. So we get that manipulation, we come up, we trade back down, internal sweep, new high, right? And so now can we potentially see buys continue from this level? I think there's some potential for it, right? Like to kind of align with that dollar idea as a with the dollar idea as a potential, buys, right? So here right there, right? This could end up being a relative zone on dollar that we could potentially look to go ahead and buy back up, right? Maybe, right? I do think that this is a pretty decent price action down here in the lows. I think the volume aligned very, very nicely with Euro USD. And I think that here, right, even when we see Euro USD actually like, again, we had this manipulation down and then Euro USD traded up, right? Look at this spike in volume that happened here as we started to drive, higher, right? And again, break through that structure. So I think Euro USD could be a potential idea there for, again, what we're looking for on dollar. And again, we're really more going to want to target just this recent high here, right? Because we still want to obviously, be cautious of the idea that maybe this ends up eventually. Obviously, right now we have an accumulation, but maybe once we get above the highs, we can see this turn into a distribution, right? So we'll see how it really wants to play out, right? But there is definitely some potential for that where we accumulate for now and then the market comes up and then we distribute, right? So the same kind of idea as what we're looking at here with dollar, which is distributing here and then potentially accumulating below the lows. That would be kind of like my most ideal scenario when it comes to the dollar pair, right? So Euro USD does align very nicely with it. Euro USD's volume aligns very nicely with the idea. So this could really be something very interesting for the coming week, for EU, right? Let's tap into, GU, right? So GU, pretty similar idea. As you guys can see, we've been wrecking it with the shorts, just absolutely killing it. For the most part, when we've been buying dollar, we've been selling GU. So it's gone really, really well, right? But now again, very, very similar to EU, right? We kind of have a zone here with GU as well, right? That being said, GU did kind of get back into where we sold the week before or 2 weeks before. So it's a little bit tricky, right? But again, I do think that these lows have a strong case to them, right? Again, with volume wise and all that. So we'll see how that ends up playing out, right? For GU, but that would be kind of the similar zone that I would want to see really start to play out on GU, right? We'll see if it happens again. Like sometimes we do obviously end up getting the market, let's say for example, EU, right? Like EU can go ahead and like let's say, chill here for a while, come down, right? Hold these lows and then like start to trade up like this, right? But at the same time as EU does something like that and like actually holds this low and holds that low, for example, right? We can see things like GU not hold those lows, right? And then go ahead and like again, even though we see EU kind of hold here, maybe GU instead, boom, like we get another sweep and then we end up seeing the market trade up from there, right? We get back into extreme areas here. That can totally happen. And for me, like if I'm gonna buy, I would not go for GU. Personally, for me, if I'm gonna buy, I think EU is gonna be the better play. And for GU, I probably wouldn't want to look for anything until we get down into these levels personally. Because that's the way it's kind of looking like for me. GU has kind of been, like we said, the reason we've been selling GU so much is because it's been the weaker pair, right? Compared to like even EU or like some of these other pairs as well, right? It's been pretty weak compared to those, right? So if we can get GU to go ahead and break below, then boom, the bias would look, I think, potentially nicer because we're going to be in a more extreme area. We're going to be below these levels and these levels. So we'll see how it goes, right? But that's more what I would look for in GU is going to be this lower, higher time frame zone over there, right? To go ahead and see if the lower time frame will match with that, right? So yeah, EU, GU, right? AU and NU are also very bullish assets in general, But what we can see is that again, like we do have some potential definitely for AU to have been a full-on distribution, right? With this whole range here. Yeah, so I don't really know. Like the price action here is not great for the buys, right? Because we have so much liquidity, building up below, right? Like this, like this, like this, like this. So if I were to look to sell dollar, I would probably use EU. If I were to look to buy dollar right now, I'd probably use AU. Even though overall, it's funny, it's interesting because overall, AU is a more bullish asset in general. Like we can see, even though we have been, kind of holding, right? Obviously, we've been mostly ranging, right? But again, like we've been ranging here on AU. On sorry, yeah, we've been ranging here on AU in comparison to just absolutely dumping on EU, right? In comparison to just absolutely dumping on GU, right? AU has managed to hold pretty strong. So, the only reason I say that that even though AU has been holding strong, it's just the liquidity below, right? We got one, two, three, four, five touches of this trend line, right? Most likely price is not going to hold those, right? And not only that, but when we see this, the first touch that starts it all, right? Like when we get the market to come down here, right? And then obviously from there, we just start to hold and hold and hold. Think about all the stop losses that are collecting below this level, right? Because of that, and also because look at this, we have a huge wick that happens, and then we also get a huge point of volume. So is it possible that the huge point of volume there is an indication that we might actually eventually get down, sweep below there on lower volume, right? Maybe hold this low, maybe get lower, right? And reaccumulate, right? I'm not sure, right? But that's kind of why I'm looking at it is like AU is the only one that I'm seeing that really has the liquidity to the downside versus having it to the upside, right? I think EU has a lot of liquidity to the upside, a lot of liquidity to the upside. So I really do think that if I'm going to look for something there, EU is going to be my most ideal scenario, right? So yeah, cool. So there's AU. Let's go into we got EU done, NU. Yeah, again, just trading down, right? NU did not hold as well as AU, so maybe NU could be something that we look for as well, right? We're kind of trending down there a little bit too, right? What were the lows on GU that you marked up? So GU was the higher time frame lows below our current low. Because by the looks of it, we might be a situation where GU actually goes lower while things like EU hold. Because again, we have a much farther push down. We've been more bearish. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one more. So it's right down here at the 1.33160 level and below, right? 3160 level and below. Cool. So yeah, NU coming down could definitely be a good play, right? We can see that as we've started to get towards these lows, huge points in volume starting to appear, right? So it's like, could that be signs of potential accumulation starting to play out, right? Looks like over here, we got lower, volume as well. So it's possible we hold here, right? Like EU, we'll see. Again, guys, like I like EU way better. I like it much, much better. So we'll see how this goes again. Like NU might do another low. Let's see how it goes, right? We'll see how it all matches up on the lower time frame to see what we're gonna really go for, right? Here's USD CAD from our buys, right? Crazy buys. Could have still been in there, but is what it is. So done with USD CAD there, right? Not really too much to go over. We're just buying. UChef. UChef looks like it's kind of distributing, to be honest. Hmm. The ways that we're taking these highs. Let me go back to UCAD here first. Okay. What's up, Mir? Hope you're doing blessed. And yeah, we have UJ as well, continuing to buy up. I don't really like UChef or UCAD, so I'm probably not going to be looking at these that much, right? But if we were looking for sells, I mean, again, we do have points of interest, for example, things like this. On UChef, we have a really nice institutional candle there at the top. And the market has been, trading lower since then, right? And maybe this whole area here could potentially be part of a redistribution, right? For USDCHF could definitely be the case. We have really, really high point of volume here, right? And again, we get lower and lower. So kind of interesting, right? And again, that is aligning with the idea we're thinking for dollar, right? For the price action we've seen so far, the volume is aligning with it. So I think it could be an interesting week this week when it comes to that. So hopefully, right, we end up getting that, as well. When it comes to buys, UJ is probably better as well, right? So things like UJ, things like Euro USD and stuff like that, AUD USD, that'll really be what we'll look for. All right. So that's dollar pairs for you guys. All right. So we've done dollar pairs. I just saw you request in the chat GBP odd. We'll do all the community requests at the end. So if you guys have any requests, for pairs that we don't normally talk about, reach out and drop it in the chat. So we have the currency pairs that we're talking about. All right. Next, we're gonna go into gold and silver. All right. So, whew, what a week. What a week. So obviously when it comes to gold and silver, right? We've obviously had huge dumps down, right? On this, right? There were some zones that we spoke about on session. Even with me, I actually managed to make money on buys this week, like over here, right? I think I took buys down here, right? Even though like we did have relatively equal lows there, I was still seeing like signs of order flow, right? Like we could see these big institutional candles like that, institutional candles like that. So I was like, okay, can potentially be a good area. But when we saw again like price reaching up into highs and then dumping, I mean, it was pretty clear reasons to like go break even and like go defensive on the trade. And then we just ended up dumping, right? So I don't think I traded gold again live or anything like that after we dumped. I just kind of been waiting. This was a zone here that we were speaking about, where we got our initial entries from when we bought back up. But we just kept going through, right? So right now, in terms of what we can potentially see going into the future, right? I mean, truthfully, it's tough to say, right? Now we're back inside of like this very extreme low, right? The market again has come back down and crashed towards those lows again. This is where we closed. So could this be an area that we potentially get buys from? Maybe, right? I really do hope so, right? Personally, right? Because again, I think that would be the cleanest opportunity. And what we would really want to see, again, would be, all right, what happens below this low here? Right? Here we can see that the market has a very high volume low that was created here on gold, right? With a big wick, right? So we can see here, huge wick being created, right? Closing off of the low, right? We had a huge volume low there, right? Price trades up, right? And then now we're aggressively coming back down into those areas and very aggressively at that, right? So we're getting a really fast push down towards these levels, right? That we previously had, again, very high volume. So can we again potentially see this actually become a accumulation inside of a previous point of interest? There is some potential for it, right? Now what we would really need would be again one more reaction off of the level and then probably one more sweep, right? We would need a first drive, second drive, and a third drive down while still respecting this higher time frame low over here, to the left, right? That's what we would really need to make that valid. And if not, guys, again, we do have to look at the possibility that maybe we're reversing on gold, right? I mean, like, a lot of people thought gold only goes up. Sometimes it's not like that, sometimes we do get bigger pullbacks. And like we obviously have to keep that in mind too, especially just considering like again, like we've spoken before a couple of times about where we reacted from when we got back up, right? So like right before the Iran war, right, we had the market pretty much starting here, huge buy up, massive buy up into those levels. And what levels are these? Right. Well, if we look again over to the left, right, we can see some higher time frame zones here. So we go to like the 2 hour, right? I believe, right? So at the 2 hour, we have like, after we had that initial crash down on gold, like all those weeks ago, right? We did see the market go ahead and pull back into that high, right? Before then getting the next impulse down that obviously we ended up bottoming out at, right? And so, this really is the high that went ahead and created the low, right? Like the difference between this high and like, let's say like this one, right? This one, huge difference, right? These are more trap candles right here. We actually have institutional candles on multiple time frames at the top, right here, right? So again, we get that 2 hour candle there, right? Let's look at the 1 hour. I think 1 hour has a really clean candle. Maybe this is just not on this feed, but yeah, again, very interesting place that we reacted from. So, and the way that we reacted from that place is also, again, kind of like manipulation, right? So we got the market go ahead and from here all the way up to here, right? Trade up, right? And get into that zone and then sell right back off, right? And then what do? We redistribute, man, right? We end up having accumulations down below this low, right? Market trades up, just barely takes the high of the accumulation, right? Before we end up starting to come down. So now we have another reason that the market can potentially come lower. I mean, like, those two things there can be scary, right? They can be scary for our trade to really go ahead and see gold buy again. I don't think that that's unlikely now. I don't think that it's unlikely for us to go ahead and break the high, but we can also just realize like, hey, we got to do some risk management when it comes to these things, right? So just be careful, right? With it because where we had the highs, again, like I said, they just made a lot of sense, right? And then, having price break down into this level now, into this extreme area, now that we've kind of taken out all these lows and everything, could still be a play, but still wait for the right confirmations, right? So wait for these to become institutional candles, wait for a type 1, 2, or 3 entry model to play out in these lows and just let things run, right? Just let it ride. So we shall see. We shall see how that ends up going with gold, right? So again, we do have a very high point of volume here, right? Very, very big wick as well. So that could be the signs of the beginning of an accumulation. So definitely keep an eye out with gold on this low. If we do manage to hold 4,400, we can potentially still start to look for buys again. If we start to break down, we're gonna have to wait for a whole new point of interest to really, show up, right? Right now, we don't really have another point of interest that we can play off of until like literally down here, unfortunately, right? So here we did have a good zone, right? That's where price traded into and reacted. We can definitely react from these levels again. If we don't react from this low, am I going to buy from here? Probably not, right? So we'll see what ends up happening, right? I think we'll know this week. I mean, again, like I am leaning towards the buy still. We are in an extreme area. We did get some pretty good volume in that low and everything, but we're just going to need to have a full-on setup really appear for us to really go ahead and take, the position, right? So that's gold there. All right, guys, hopefully that makes sense, right? Potential accumulations happening in this low, but be careful because we did have redistribution after redistribution happen inside of the highs. Now, silver, all right, similar idea, right? Again, like we have price trading back down into here. I don't really know how much I really like this low here, right? For me personally with silver, even if gold does hold its low, I think we might get another low here on silver. Where would really that low go to? I mean, this is the previous redistribution. This is really as far as I could see it going, right? If gold gets down to like 53, that would be like the most obvious buy, I think. Like for us to go ahead and take. It's still quite a ways away. I mean, like I can't even imagine silver at 52 after just freaking hitting 116. It's pretty insane. This shit looks like a rug pull, to be honest. It's actually insane. But I do think that there is some possibility for price to, reach those levels genuinely, right? Especially if gold does want to reach here, right? Then, that would be pretty simple, to see silver as well do the same thing. But let's kind of look and see if we can get the same concept as with gold here. Um, yeah, I mean, we have this down candle, we have a huge volume spike, right? So, I mean, we can take a look inside of this low here, and see like, again, this is the 1 hour time frame, right? And so like, yeah, if we like this zone here on multiple time frames, then maybe, right? But again, like when I even look at the 2 hour, right, we just got a massive wick instead of getting a really good candle. When I look at the 4 hour, again, another massive wick. So kind of not the best for that idea. Okay, guys. So that's all I can really say about it, right? It does look a little scary. It does look like we might get some additional lows going on. But if I were to look for the buy scenario, I'd personally keep an eye on gold for that, right? Rather than silver. So personally, I prefer gold for that play because it looks like we're kind of already kind of setting it up a little bit better. And we have a little bit more room, I guess you could say, to the downside to still hold this low while at the same time, again, sweeping multiple times, right? We'll probably get an initial buy off the market and then maybe one more, and then we go. Or again, maybe instead of it being one more, maybe we get an initial buy, mitigate, right, and then we go. Could also be the case, right? But again, the most ideal would be if we can take the low, react one more time, and then take the low again, and then go, because that's going to really give us that 3 drive push, right? And obviously, we're going to want to keep an eye on the volume at the bottom to go ahead and see, like, all right, can that actually make sense for a potential spring or whatever it might be, right? Can you please have a look at your GBP later? Okay, well, I'll look at that in a second. Sounds good. So we got metals done. Okay. Now we're gonna move on to indices. Okay, guys. So indices are in a very interesting place for me, right? Definitely have been looking for these buys. I've been waiting for these buys for so long. And now we've really had some really good sweeps, right? So obviously over the last couple of weeks since the Iran war began, right? We spoke about the potential for US 30 to target these lows, right? Potentially get back into these higher time frame lows over here, right? And then from there, go ahead and trade back up, right? So that's what we've been kind of been looking for because if price were to break through here and like really hold below these levels, then again, it could be that we're going to go ahead and trade down towards like 42,800 even. I mean, this is where we had the lows come in for tariffs, right? Tariffs were not that long ago, right? This is only like April 1st, right, of 2025. So it hasn't even been a year since we've really had this big push to the downside happen. So can we revisit last year's price action? Absolutely, right? I definitely think we can do that. And it would still make a lot of sense, for our trade, right? So obviously that's a little scary, right? But, that would really mean like a huge pronounced push down for indices, right? I don't know if I'm really a believer in that yet, because again, like I said, we have not closed below lows, right? We could still definitely respect this low, right? Kind of use that maybe as liquidity and then continuing to buy up could definitely be the case, but I would definitely be careful with it, right? So I did manage to catch a good win on US 30 over here, right? Where we went for about a 1 to 3, right? About 400 pips. And then after that, we ended up reversing. I did see like we were seeing a potential accumulations there, but obviously, we only ended up playing out short term. But what I can see is like I do see liquidity above, right? When it comes to this. Let me see if I can just, yeah, I gotta delete all this. Actually, I'm just gonna delete everything here. Cool. So yeah, so what I'm kind of seeing here up top is like, can all this here from there to there just be liquidity, right? And then maybe this push to the downside here was our sweep. So I would really still, again, like honestly, guys, I'm still in the mindset to buy here. When it comes to indices, I still believe in it. I definitely think that we can see recoveries from it, right? But only time will tell really in terms of how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, right? All we can really look at is just kind of see key areas where it would make sense for price to come to and react from, right? But we don't, we obviously, aren't exactly sure like which low, price is going to decide to reverse off of. Whether it ends up being us just sweeping this low and then continuing to buy up, or do we end up reaching the next point of reaccumulation, right? Which is over here, right? This is our next unmitigated area of reaccumulation, right? This is accumulation down here, right? So really, those are really the two main zones I'd look at would be like again maybe like maybe this level or all the way down in the extreme area, right? I don't really know if I think we'll go for the extreme area. I think we're more bullish than that, right? Which is why I'll probably still attempt inside of these lows that we're at now, right? And if these don't play out, then again potentially down at 44 400. We'll see how the market gets on Tuesday, right? If we obviously just drop through, because I'm not trading until Tuesday anyways. So if the market just kind of drops through and then Tuesday we're down here, I'll probably look for buys down here. And if not, then we're going to look for the tariff lows and we'll go from there. So that's US 30. NASDAQ, right? Similar idea. Okay. And again, like we have not respected this sweep low, right? So yeah, I mean, even for NASDAQ, it's starting to look like we might get down into areas like this one. So yeah, sell off, buy back up, right? So we got a sell to buy motion happening right here on NASDAQ, and price is kind of starting to head towards those levels. We can see that we've now broken a bunch of levels right here, here, right? Even here, right? I was kind of thinking that we might potentially buy, right? Didn't get it, but then we end up now having price now going below even the higher time frame low. So I wonder, you know, can we get price to trade into there before, buying back up potentially, right? Again, all we have here is higher time frame zones. We have to confirm on the lower time frame to really tell us whether that makes sense for a reversal or not, right? So we want to see price get into that level, get to the lower time frame, and then after that start to see the structure shift, right? As we start to, go ahead and look for the potential buys again. We're not just trying to buy the bottom because we tap into a zone. We're trying to wait. We're trying to see the structure start to play out in our favor, and then from there we go for our trade, right? So yeah, that's indices there, guys, for the most part, right? S&P as well, traded below. So we'll see how that goes this week, right? I think indices will be something I'm definitely still keeping my eye on. I want to find this buy when it happens. But yeah, we just gotta be cautious. We just gotta be cautious. So indices done, right? Next is going to be crypto. So crypto. So crypto's an interesting one. We've had the market go ahead and obviously have some pretty nice buys throughout the week, right? We have seen the market go ahead and break towards 76K, right? So I think we just barely missed 76K, but again, we have potential sweeps to happen here at the top that are a lot cleaner now. So we get like again, kind of like this big buy up here where I cut my buys last week on Saturday. And then we ended up seeing a big sell-off back down, right? So now it's like it's less clean. It's less clean to like look for the buys, um, than it was before, right? I ended up taking a trade this weekend as well, somewhere over here, right? I was thinking, okay, can this potentially be like a reaccumulation where we distribute, we sweep, and then we come back up? That didn't end up happening. We just ended up distributing and then selling off, right? Even with this, I mean, like, I probably should have seen that that zone was there. So it's pretty clear and obvious that, we could potentially see the sell-offs happen. But it is what it is, right? And then we had the market go ahead and crash down towards new lows. I didn't lose on that trade, thankfully. I managed to get out at break even, but yeah, again, just kind of tough. But yeah, if we were to look for the buys though, I think that this area down here would be a good one. Change. Yeah. So yeah, we have a really nice institutional candle that's sitting down here on the smaller time frames, or actually not even just smaller time frame. This is the 4 hour. But yeah, here on the daily though, we also have this big buy up imbalances and stuff. So price can really go either way, right? But those are really the two main zones that I'm going to be marking out for BTC is going to be down here. If we can hold this level, then that means that we're holding order flow and we could potentially buy up towards even 80K, right? If not, then we're just going to pull back into this level here, right? And then drop off towards 67, right? Or sorry, 60, right? Towards here could end up being the target, right? So if we do react from this high, then yeah, we could be going down to 60. But if we react from this low and we make a new high, then again, we could potentially go to 80. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there for BTC when it comes to these two main price levels and these two main areas of order flow, right? Cool, 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 cool. So there we got all of those points done. All right, now we're going to go into the GBP pairs that you guys asked me to go into, right? So first we're going to go into GBP odd. Okay. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to GBP odd for you there, brother. GU, GNZD, G odd should be here. Cool. So let's go ahead and delete everything here. Yeah, I was just kind of playing with some ideas there. But yeah, so we do have a pretty nice area down in here, right? It does look like we had the market go ahead and sweep through lows with this push to the downside there, right? Could it be that we were just using these lows right here as potential internal points of liquidity to go ahead and sweep and go towards new highs, right? Yes, I do trade oil as well. I do trade oil as well. So yeah, so we have again the market going ahead and trading below this low. Okay. And it's not bad for potential signs of accumulation. I mean, we kind of do have, um, these highs over here and stuff, right? That we could potentially go for there for G odd. Could that be an accumulation? Potentially, right? I mean, when we look at the volume, I mean, it's decent. It's not great, right? Definitely a big spike here, as we came lower, but we also have a big spike here. We could still see another drive, truthfully, but GP odd could potentially be a actually good idea for a buy, right? So looking maybe like inside of here, could end up being the play for G odd. So again, I do like how when we broke out of here, we had a really high point of volume. So coming back into that level, potentially looking for buys, I think can make sense for G odd, but only time will tell. We'll see how that goes. But definitely look for lower time frame price action inside of those levels. GJ is looking bullish. We obviously have a distribution that happened here to the left, but we also see that an accumulation happened here at the bottom. And then since then, obviously, has been trading up, right? So, really when it comes down to it, like GJ looks still bullish to me, right? It could be that we are driving below lows here, right? It does look like actually we have relatively equal lows sitting right here, right? So not the best for potential continuation plays, right? Could that hold? Maybe, but not very likely. So what I'd probably want to see is like maybe GJ pulling back into like areas like this to go ahead and look for buys again towards new highs. I think that could be what we're looking for, right? I mean, again, here at the top, actually, we do kind of have this last push up before we dumped off, right? So, but again, like I'd rather just follow the structure, right? So I would say, potentially down in there, right? And it does kind of align with what we're thinking with GA as well. So. That's what I'm thinking for a GJPY. Sorry, guys. Whew. We're on our second hour of calls in a row. But let's go ahead and go. So this is GJ. All right, we're gonna go into Euro GBP now for Steve. Okay, interesting. So big buy up just happened on EJ, or sorry, on EG. Really seeing the market trade back into this low. Big wick there. To be honest, guys, I'm personally still bearish on this. It does look like we'll probably go ahead and go towards these relatively equal lows. They're sitting right there. So yeah, tough to say, right? If this is a distribution here, right? If this is a distribution where, we have first, second, third, right? Maybe this can be an LPSY and maybe that can be an LPSY. So I'd probably look at those LPSY areas for potential shorts again on Euro GBP. So like maybe this area that we stopped in there, maybe this area that we stopped in there. Obviously, the most ideal is going to be the imbalance that's sitting up here at the top. Oops. But I'm personally still would rather look for shorts here on Euro GBP, right? We can see that the sell-offs that we have been looking for before, or sorry, the buys up that we've been looking for before were very clean, and then the sells off that we were looking for were also very clean. But then right now, we have these relatively equal lows that are sitting here in this area, right? So we'll see how that ends up going there with Euro GBP. But yeah, I would probably still continue to look for sells because this kind of looks like relatively equal lows there at the bottom, right? So there we go. GB and that it's funny because all those kind of align, right? We have Euro GBP lower, which would be GBP higher, right? We have GBP odd as well, higher, which would be GBP higher, and we have GJ as well higher, which would be GBP higher. So maybe we'll end up getting some buys there on GBP, right? Hopefully. Right? How's that looking? Yeah, we can take a look at oil if you want. Sure. So oil here, bullish as hell, right? We had a really, really nice, area of accumulation here. If I were to look to buy oil again, it would only be down towards these levels, right? So I'd want to see the market go ahead and sweep below all these lows here, right? Get back into this previous area here of potential reaccumulation, where we see the market go ahead and again, like we have this initial sell-off right here, boom, right? So we have that institutional candle there on the bigger time frame, right? We come up, we trade back down there, doing this trap candle, right, to create our second point of manipulation, right? So seeing us come back into there, I think could be a potential good area for us to again look for longs again. But I don't think we're not necessarily done at all with oil. I think we might still see some continuation buys. So that's what I'm looking for. If we can hold these highs, sorry. If we can hold these highs like from here to here, right? Actually, I'll just do it from here. But yeah, if we can hold these highs here and, again, like potentially like basically like just chill here, come down, sweep, right? That would be like my ideal area for oil, right? So basically below 90, right? Below, or rather below 80, 89 would be where I'd want to see us to potentially buy for leverage. Okay, guys? So that's that there, right? We have another question here. Do you look at the GBP currency index while trading GBP pairs? And same with others like AUD cat pairs. Personally, I used to. I don't really anymore. It's just a lot, and plus those charts aren't really very clean. Like they typically look you know, like there's a lot of gaps and stuff like that. I mean, I just never really got into it, but technically, yes, you could use that correlation. But backtest it, right? Backtest it yourself and see what it looks like. See if you like it, right? But it definitely can be something that we look at. So instead of looking at that normally, I normally just compare it to the other pairs. So I'll just compare the GBP pairs to each other. I'll compare the DXY pairs to each other, or sorry, the CAD pairs to each other, and so on and so forth, right? So that's really what I'm personally doing for that. Okay. Whew. So yeah, guys, that's that. For today. I think we're pretty much set up for the week, right, with these zones. So hopefully you guys, learned something today. I'm gonna be probably offline for a little bit because we're gonna be finishing up the bachelor party here in the next 2 days. We're here till Monday in Montreal. And then after that, we'll be back on the charts on Tuesday, and I'll be back home. So yeah, that's gonna be good. And again, once again, I'll mention on this call for anybody who wasn't on the past ones, right? We are currently inside of our registration weeks for the personal one-on-one mentorship for the boot camp, right? So again, like we're having Q1 finish up just now, so all those students are obviously going to be done with their mentorship, or they're going to still obviously continue in and be on our calls and stuff. But we're going to be now taking on a new group, right? So we take on new groups every 3 months. And then after that, we just work with that same group for 3 months straight, right? This is a transformation program to really help you guys, elevate your trading level, and your understanding of how to really not only take entries, how do we take exits, how do we manage positions properly, how do we avoid these mental pitfalls and mistakes that come with trading, and really doing that by working with an experienced trader, somebody who's been through, multiple different market cycles, right? We've seen the ups, we've seen the downs, right? Inside of the market, and really the experience is something that, is so valuable, something you can't teach at all, when it comes to stuff like this. So yeah, for any of you guys that are interested in that is going to be closing by April 1st, right? And then there's not going to be any opportunity to get into it. So make sure that you guys reach out ASAP. For those of you guys that are already signed up that are on the call, obviously, we're going to keep running it up together. We're going to keep doing it. And I'm excited to help you guys see results over the next few months. But yeah, guys, super, super excited and grateful to, be on here once again. And I will see you guys again on Wyckoff Sundays, episode 10, which is exciting. We're in the double digits. So yeah, guys, much love, much appreciation. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.